The World Handicapping System. It's important to remember that this presentation has been put together to give you a brief insight into how the figures have been derived and how the handicap indexes are calculated. For you as a golfer, the process of which you will need to follow when playing golf is highlighted only in the penultimate slide. So it's all background information on where it's all come from. Equity for all players. The whole purpose of a golfing handicap system is to provide equity for all golfers, to level the playing field, enabling players of all abilities to have a fair and enjoyable game with or against others. The challenge was to define equity. What is it? The World Handicap System has been designed to consider fairness for all golfers within its key features, which enables all golfers to play on a fair and equal basis. What is the World Handicap System, you may ask? Its purpose is to enable as many golfers as possible the opportunity to obtain a handicap index, use their handicap index on any golf course around the world, compete or play recreationally with anyone else on a fair and equal basis. What is a handicap index? A player's handicap index is the figure that should represent their demonstrated ability and, where appropriate, take into account scores that do not reflect with their normal playing ability. The process of calculating a handicap index incorporates the safeguards needed to help ensure that a player's handicap index remains reflective of their ability and the equity is retained for all golfers. So you don't want big swings up and down, basically, in your handicap index. It should be level with your ability. What is the foundation of the World Handicap System? It enables handicaps to be portable by adjusting a player's handicap according to the relative difficulty of the golf course that you're playing on. A player's handicap index will be converted into a number of strokes needed to play the course that you are playing to handicap. It understands that a player will likely need a different number of strokes to play different courses. What is a course rating? The next three slides try to explain how they've come up with course ratings, what they've used to determine the rating of your golf course or any golf course. So what is a course rating? It's the evaluation of the playing difficulty of a course for scratch golfers under normal course and weather conditions. It's based on yardage and other obstacles to the extent that they affect the scoring for each golfer. So basically, when they look at your a golf course for a scratch golfer, they take into account that the average tee shot will be 250 yards and the average second shot will be 200 yards. And then they look at the obstacles around those areas from the tees and to the greens, etc. And it's expressed as a number of strokes expected taken to one decimal place. So that is a course rating. The course rating is for scratch golfers. A bogey rating, this is the evaluation of the same playing difficulty of a course. This is for bogey golfers this time instead of scratch golfers under normal course and weather conditions. The bogey golfer is assumed to be a golfer of 20 handicap, average tee shot around 200 yards, an average second shot of around 150 yards, and it looks at the same hazards in the areas. And it's the same again, it's expressed as a number of strokes expected taken to one decimal place. So you've got a course rating and you've got a bogey rating. What's assessed? So the things that are assessed are, length of the hole, roll on the ball, elevation, dog legs, any forced layups, wind conditions, any altitude, topography, fairways, how wide, targets, how big the greens are, how deep the rough is, where the bunkers are, any lateral penalty areas or streams crossing, how thick the trees are, how narrow the trees are, the surface of the greens, and any psychological hazards on the course. For Worsley, the golf course, the ratings have come out as 70.8 for the white tees, the yellow tees of 69.6, and the ladies' red tee, of which we have a temporary certificate at the moment, is 71.5. We have a temporary certificate because of COVID-19. The course rating visit was cancelled this year. So what is a slope rating? A slope rating is a number which incorporates the relative playing difficulty of a course for bogey golfers compared to scratch golfers. It is a combination of the course rating and the bogey rating that allows us to calculate the slope rating from a set of tees. Slope rating is the difference between the bogey rating and the course rating multiplied by a constant factor, and it is expressed as a whole number from 55 to 155. A golf course of standard relative playing difficulty has a slope rating of 113. So with a course of 113, your handicap index and playing handicap will be the same. So the difference between the scratch figure and the bogey figure for both men and women multiplied by the difference multiplied by a factor gives you a course rating, a slope rating, sorry, not course rating. Next thing is, how do I get a handicap index? So new golfers used to submit 3 cards and the handicap committee would give them a handicap. Now a new golfer must complete 54 holes. Same, it's made up of a combination of 9 or 18 holes. The scores will then be made into 3 18-hole scores to allow a handicap index to be allocated. Your handicap index will continue to develop until it contains 20 scores. So the calculation of the new handicap index, you've got the number of score differentials in the scoring record, the score differential to be used in the calculation, and any adjustment. So when you put 3 cards in, it will pick your lowest one and subtract 2, and so on and so on. 4 cards, lowest one, subtract 1. 5 cards, it's the lowest one with no adjustment. 6 cards, it's the average of the lowest 2 minus 1. And then from then on, there's no adjustment. It just uses the average of the lowest 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 until you get to 20 cards. So how is my first handicap index calculated? So a beginner puts in 3 scores of calculated differentials of 36.5, 43.2 and 45.9. So the lowest differential is 36.5. It takes 2 off and it will allocate you a handicap index of 34.5. So that would be your initial handicap index. How is my continuing handicap index calculated? So averages the lowest 8 of the most recent 20 score differential rounded to the nearest 10th. And the calculation will include any playing conditions change, so that will require 8 scores to be entered on any particular day. A previous ability between a defined period, and it got caps, upward movement within a defined period. So it will not, there are caps applied, which I'll explain in a second, which will not allow you to go up by too many shots. And it applies additional adjustments to a handicap index when an exceptional score is submitted. So it's not a lot different to the old system in that respect. So the basic calculation of a score differential, how is your score differential calculated? So there's this figure of 113, the standard course rating. So you divide that by the slope rating of your course that you're playing. You multiply that by the adjusted gross. Your adjusted gross score is your gross score, and then the computer will adjust it to give you, like if you have a no return, it will give you a net double bogey on that hole, or if you had a 10, it would bring it down to a net double bogey. So that's as the normal system. And then you subtract your course rating from that score, multiply the two together, and that gives you your score differential. Give you a couple of examples of this. If a player adjusted gross is 95, and he's playing on a course with a rating of 71.5 and a slope rating of 125, his differential is worked out in the following way. So there's this 113 again, divided by 125, which was the course slope rating, which gives you 0.904. You multiply that by your gross minus the course rating, which was 71.5, which gives you 23.5. Multiply the two together, and that would give you a score differential of 21.2. So basically, that's your handicap index of 21.2. Another example is exactly the same, but now you're playing on a course, a more difficult course. So it's got a course rating of 73.8 and a slope rating of 140. So you work it out in the same way. There's this standard figure of 113 divided by 140. Multiply that by your adjusted gross minus the course rating, multiply the two together, and that's your handicap index, 18.7. So a lower score may not always produce a lower score differential. This will be dependent on the golf course rating and the slope rating. Therefore, a higher score on a harder course may result in a lower score differential than a lower score on an easier course. Example of that is when the player scored 95 on the easier course, he had a differential of 21.2. But when he scored only 2 shots more on the harder course, his differential came down to 18.7. So you can see his lower differential was on the harder course. The system has a memory of your low handicap index, so it remembers your lowest handicap index that you've been. A player's low handicap index is remembered within the handicap formula. It provides a reference point against which the current handicap index can be compared. So this is where your caps will come in. So remember where you are at a particular time. This is to help ensure that the player's current index cannot stray too far away from their demonstrated ability in too short a space of time. If the new index is more than a certain strokes above the low index, a cap is triggered. This is all done within the software. It's not obviously something that you would need to take into account yourself. It's all done automatically. So we have soft caps and hard caps. These are the two caps that he puts in place. A soft cap, and what that is it suppresses any increase in your handicap index when the difference between the new calculated index and your low figure that it remembers is greater than 3. And then above 3, any increase is reduced by 50%. The hard cap is similar. It prevents a further increase by placing a hard cap at 5 above your low index. Both caps are only applicable once you've got 20 scores in the system. So whilst you're building up your handicap profile, it understands, especially if you're a new golfer, that you'll have big swings in scores. But the more and more scores you put in, the flatter your curves should be. And so these caps shouldn't come into play that often. Playing conditions calculation. It's called the competition standard scratch at the CSS. Now it's PCC. It's performed once per day by the system, and it's performed once 8 cards have been submitted. And it considers all acceptable scores submitted on a golf course in all formats, competitive, recreational, of 9 or 18 holes. It requires at least 8 acceptable scores to be submitted on the day, and that with between a handicap index of less than or equal to 36. And it is automatically applied within the calculation of score differentials for all players. It is designed to be simple and conservative in nature, and it adjusts the score in integer values between minus. So basically the competition standard scratch, as it was, now PCC, can go down by 1 or go up by 3 on any particular day. The revision of handicap index. Players must submit their scores as soon as possible after the round is completed and before midnight. This is to ensure that the score will be used in the playing conditions calculation. A player's handicap index will be updated the day after a score was submitted. If more than one score is posted, so it's a 36-hole competition, the score posted first will not update the record prior to the second score being returned. Both scores will be updated the following day. So basically, on a 36-hole competition, you play off the same handicap index for both rounds. What scores can I use? Rounds played in any authorised format can be used for handicap index purposes. All singles competition rounds are mandatory, whether it be 9 or 18 holes. In Great Britain and Ireland, any social / general play scores need to be pre-registered to be acceptable before the player starts a round. And at the moment, it can be registered on the Intelligent Golf app before play. Intelligent Golf haven't yet put anything in place so that you can do it on the club website. That is in progress. All formats of play are indicated on this slide. The ones with the green ticks are the ones that are acceptable in Great Britain and Ireland. All the other ones with no ticks are acceptable in other countries. What do I need to do when I want to play? So now we get down to the bit that affects the everyday golfer. You convert your handicap index into a course handicap to determine the number of shots you receive. A course handicap table will be available at each club, or you could use an app or the club handicap software. At the moment, we've got one that's on the notice board outside the pro shop. There will be one at the end of the path, replacing the current sign that's there. I'm just waiting for simply select the tees you want to play off, look up your handicap index to ascertain your course handicap for the day. If you are playing in a competition or match play, you will also need to know any handicap allowances that may be applied. You will remember this in the past as 7/8, 3/4, recently 90% or 100%. These allowances have now changed. So the allowances for different forms of golf can be seen on these two tables. I'll just highlight one or two. So for an individual medal now, instead of getting 100% of your handicap, you now get 95% of you. Most of them are 95%, 85% in 4-ball stroke play. The only time it's 100% is individual match play, so you still get 100% of the difference. There is also one of these at the moment on the notice board outside the pro shop as well. So if you go back to a previous example where the playing handicap was 19 on the day, he's playing in a medal, you get 95% of that, so he'll lose one shot, so he'll play off 18 for that medal. The course handicap calculation. So this is how the calculation is made. So when you read it off the sheet, off the board that's on the first tee, this is how the calculation is come up with. So you've got your handicap index multiplied by our course slope rating or any other course slope rating where you're playing at, divided by this common figure of 113, multiply but those two together, and that gives you your playing handicap on that day. So for an example, off the white tees at Worsley, which has a slope rating of 136, if you had a handicap index of 15.6, you multiply that by 1.2, and that gives you a handicap of 18.7, which is 19 shots on that day. Going back again, if you were playing in a medal, you'd get 95% of that, so you'd get 18 shots. So the process for you as a golfer, you need to know your handicap index. You work out the course handicap off the board. You adjust it for the competition that you're playing, and then you play golf. Once you've played your golf, you return your score. The system does the rest for you. An example of a handicap table that you will see is that one. That's ours for Worsley Golf Club. You'll find that on the notice board outside the pro shop. And that, then please call or email me, and I'm sure we can answer anything that any query you've got. Thank you very much.